All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Health Movement Podcast. I'm Derek, your host, a certified personal trainer, two-sport collegiate athlete, and a teacher of over 20 years. We have a really impressive guest with us tonight, but before I introduce him, I just want to reiterate, we're not doctors, so before you change any nutrition or start any new programming, please consult with your physician. But without any further ado, Jesse Wright is a high performance consultant for elite athletes and teams. Thank you so much for hopping on with us. This is awesome.
Derek, looking forward to the conversation. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
That title is awesome, if I'm being honest, high performance consultant.
Yeah.
Could you give us a little background into what exactly that entails?
Yeah, sure. That's sort of a title born out of, can't really think of anything better to call myself with the stuff that I do.
Seems accurate from what you've told me you do, but
yeah,
I'd love to put to word.
Like every great strength coach, we just borrow and steal from other stuff that's out there. So, you look up a whole bunch of titles of people that are doing similar and you just steal what they're using. So that's sort of where that came from. But currently, yes, I do a lot of consulting projects for sports teams and organizations, again, somehow tied to elite level athletics, but in a number of different areas that have run the gamut from weight room and facility design to athlete testing and assessment to leadership workshops to a lot of public speaking. I sort of have three verticals to my consultancy. One of them is sports performance. One of them is helping with emerging sports technologies. And then I have a whole brand that I teach interpersonal skill development to young high-performance sport practitioners. So I divide my time between those three verticals, and the best title sort of, was high-performance consultant, I guess, that covers all that ground. Prior to that, so I've been at that for about 4 years now. Prior to that, I was with the Philadelphia 76ers for 14 years. 9 of those years were as the head strength and conditioning coach, and 5 were in a role titled Director of Performance Science, which was a bit of a mixed bag that dealt with wearable technology, load management. I oversaw our nutrition team for all those years, kind of brought together our team dietitian and our culinary staff, a lot of proactive recovery. We built a new training center, a practice facility at that time, and yeah, so there was a whole bunch of cool stuff that I did. I was just no longer training the athletes directly in that role. And then before the 76ers, I worked for a couple different universities in a strength and conditioning coach role. I worked in the private sector. We had a couple high-level contracts outside of Philadelphia that provided the platform to work for some other teams through that company. That's actually how I got introduced to the 76ers at first. And then going way back to when I started, I was an undergrad at Temple University and got an opportunity to work as an undergraduate strength and conditioning coach there, working with some of the teams, and that led to my internship. And I spent a couple years in the NFL, one with the Philadelphia Eagles and one over in the league called NFL Europe, if you remember that. Yeah, originally called the World League of American Football, and then the NFL kind of got their arms around it. So I worked for the team in Barcelona for a year as the head strength coach there. Yeah,
that must have been quite a difference going over to Spain as opposed to hanging out in Philly.
It was. Yeah, it was a really interesting opportunity. I was 23 years old at the time and had no business being a head strength coach at that stage of my career. I look back and can't even count the amount of mistakes that I made. But again, opportunity to live in Europe. There was 1 month training camp in Orlando, and then all the 6 teams in the league all sort of took off and departed to the cities that they were going to spend the season in. It was a 10-week season. So I was lucky enough to get to Barcelona and lived on the Mediterranean Sea in a hotel for 3 months with the rest of the team. And it was my first head strength and conditioning coach opportunity. So
that's great. It sounds like this is kind of what you wanted to do from the get-go, and you started right out of college and it kind of made this your career. It's branched off, it sounds like, in different kind of avenues, but all around performance and strength, conditioning, nutrition, every aspect of it. It sounds like you've hit.
Yeah. I've been fortunate. I was fairly targeted. I guess maybe focused from early on. I was the the undersized high school football player that just wanted to gain a little bit of weight and, try to be
Yeah.
able to play that sport better. So I actually got an opportunity through one of the football coaches to join a powerlifting team that had just started.
Oh,
And that was my first sort of toe in the water with structured, formalized training.
yeah.
We had a wonderful experienced power lifter that sort of walked us through. He was a master's deadlift champion and kind of had his own line of supplements and everything. And I was like, at that 15 years old, I was all in. It was great. I loved
Oh,
it.
and at
Right.
that age too, it's
Yeah.
like a sponge in terms of building muscle and everything once
Yeah.
you
Just
dial it in.
complemented football so well. And that at that point in time, I said, you know what, I wouldn't mind being involved in this, right? To somehow carve a career out of being
Yeah.
in that space somehow. And I thought it was going to be physical therapy. And I did have intentions to do that. I went to Temple with sort of this dual program that you left there with a 4-year degree in exercise science, but you also took all the prerequisites to be able to apply to a graduate school in physical therapy. That was before it was a doctorate. It's a
I
DPT now,
got you.
but it was a master's of physical therapy. So that's where I thought I was going to take it. But the strength and conditioning coach thing took off from, being involved in some of the sports teams and working in different capacities as an undergrad. So I kind of took that and ran with it.
That's great.
Yeah.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, I mean, it sounds like you've been around elite athletes in multiple different sports. And if someone's going to go from really, really good or great athlete up to that elite level, um, I can't imagine it's a difference in necessarily programming, but the mindset the athlete takes in order to get the most out of their body and out of their potential. Is that something you've seen across the board, or am I off base there?
No, that's very accurate. I think when you're talking about elite of elite, I think it's we use this word mindset and commitment, habits, schedule, routine. I think that is one of the biggest differentiators when you look at, again, the fortunate opportunity to spend a lot of weeks and months and years and seasons around guys that reached the most elite, highest level of basketball in the world. And the ones that really succeed and the ones that you can say, this guy truly stands out amongst a world of standout athletes are the ones that really commit consistently over and over to doing the things that are going to help them perform better at night. And that's only, and being on the basketball court is only one, it's not a insignificant part of it, but it is only one part of it. There are so many other things that go into the routine of being an elite level athlete at that level. And just like any other human being, it's easy to sort of do those things now and again,
Yeah.
right? But the ones that truly get it and truly reach peak performance are the ones that just build that into their DNA. It's just their being. They have a routine each day. There's a real rhythm to an in-season home practice day.
Does it
And
become almost an obsession with the elite of the elite that
you could,
needs to have a-
you could say that. You could say that. I mean, it's an unflinching routine where they won't allow anything to get in the way of what it is they know they need to do to prepare to play well at night. And of course, life happens. I'm saying
Yeah,
that
of
sort of
course.
very, very exaggerated, but I can't tell you the amount of athletes that, again, like a great example, my world for a lot of years was helping to set up an environment for our team nutrition. And again, I'm not a registered dietitian at all, but I worked directly with the team dietitian. I worked directly with our culinary staff and our executive chef. And then you have to, there's so many different eating environments in the NBA, between eating on, chartered flights to go into hotels to eating and visiting team arenas. And, you go out for team dinners and all that stuff. And you want to try to tighten all of that up and keep it as consistent as possible. And one of the things that we did is try to individualize and address our guys' personalized needs as best as possible. And meal timing and nutrient timing and supplement timing is a big part of that to optimize. So just the timing of caffeine
Yeah.
delivery, right, around a game or something like that. And I say that, as it leads to the routine conversation, I can't tell you how many times that maybe if you were off by 5 minutes or 10 minutes with that pregame caffeine or a pregame meal, when it's
Yeah.
exactly when a player is used to eating his pregame meal, that literally puts him in a space psychologically that now I've done what I need to do with my pregame meal to play well at night. This is my routine. This is what I've learned is going to help me. And if that's off, even just a little bit, these guys coming at you and go, hey, let's go. Like, where is it? I don't have
Yeah.
it, you know? And on one hand, you don't care, you don't love the fact that they're coming at you in the moment, but you can't do anything but respect it, right? Because that's what they've learned is going to help them best. And you're like, you know what? I do. I want to do everything I can to support that level of commitment. So just tying a bow on all of that, I think that is sort of the biggest thing that separates when you get a chance to see how those guys operate, these elite high performers in that sport. And I would think it applies in the military space and high performers and leadership and C-suite
Yeah.
executives and everything, that people fall into a set routine that they know is going to help them be successful in their environment. And they do it over and over and over, and they're very willing and able and committed to that level of consistency.
Which is crazy to think about. And I don't know if you're a Brian Scalabrine fan, but I remember
I've met Brian a few times. Yeah.
have you really? He seems
Yep.
like an incredible guy. And I remember he had the I think it was called the challenge or something, where basketball players would challenge him because they thought he was a scrub. And at one point he said, like, I'm closer to LeBron James than you are to me.
Yeah.
But these are the peak athletes of all athletes. So they're looking for that edge, whatever that little thing is. And it sounds like that's actually the way it is. I mean, I come from a background of a Division III athletes, and it's very different than when you get to this level. So it's that's interesting. But it's the stories you hear. The ones who are the top are the ones who are focused on every aspect of their life, because like you said, it's not just the basketball court or the football field or wherever you happen to be. That's a small percentage of your day in terms of the 24 hours.
Absolutely.
How you fuel your body, how you recover, the training you do outside of it, that's all incredibly huge.
Yeah.
So what would a typical day look like for an athlete in any field? Like when you go, I'm thinking more off season, if they're getting ready to are they looking at like, all right, here's where I need to improve my body here. Maybe I felt like I didn't have lift in my legs by the end of the season, so I have to improve my conditioning. Or are those sort of questions and goals set up throughout the off season? Is that generally how?
Yeah. I would think that applies to most guys. I mean, very individualized. Again, the veteran guys have learned. The veteran guys have learned sort of what the sequence and the choreography of their 5 to 6 month off season that they know to prepare. But those guys, younger guys, it would all start with some type of goals and objectives and kind of KPIs assessment as an audit at the end of one season, and that would be directly tied to maybe any injuries that may have occurred throughout the season, things that they need to work on, minutes played. Of course, it would tie directly to their game and any kind of skills that they want to develop as it relates to both their individual development and what the team would need them to do. And there's a whole team of people that would be involved in helping that player address all of those KPIs, many of which are on the team staff. And then some of them, athletes will go to not just the team city, but they'll go home, right? And maybe they have their forever home in Los Angeles or Chicago or Miami or Omaha, Nebraska, and they could spend a good portion of the off season in that setting, in that city, but still can't veer from the goals and the training that we know that they would need to do to get prepared for the season. So with all of that, it's it could. The typical day would, I would think most guys, when they're in the thick of training, and just like regular human beings, they'll take time off and they'll have offload weeks and they'll go on vacations with family and everything. But when they're in their real flow, it's probably a 3 to 4 hour day, I would think, in the off season. An hour or two of that would be off court. And when I say that, it's not definitely an hour or two in a weight room. There could be prehab mobility work with a physiotherapist, physical therapist, soft tissue therapist, working on any mobility issues or any soft tissue work they need. And that could be just sort of a prep type lead up to a weight room session. They probably have either the team strength coach working for them. A lot of them do secure their own personal trainers in the off season. A lot of them have existing relationships with guys or facilities that they train at in the off season. So that would probably occupy the first hour or two of the day. And then depending on the guy, some like to just work on skill, like 1-on-0 type stuff. And maybe they have a skills trainer that they'll work on, and they have a set number of shots that they want to get up at, different locations from the court. And that is the biggest part of their on-court workout. But a lot of guys like playing 5-on-5 too, right? And they'll go to cities where they know there's really good runs going on with other pro caliber players, and then a big part of their day might be 5-on-5, right?
And how is that, like, in terms of injuries and that sort of thing? I mean, they're working on their game, they're practicing like they need to do that in the off season. Is there the concern with injuries? And I'm sure that happens on occasion. I don't really remember hearing anything catastrophic happening during off-season training like that, but I imagine that comes up. But is that greenlit from the team? Like, hey, we know you got to work. They're like, no going backcountry skiing, through wherever. But I imagine the hoop piece, you need them playing those full games.
Yeah. Again, like in a perfect world, in my opinion, you don't have an entire summer of full court 5-on-5. That's probably unnecessary. There's other ways you can improve. I'm a huge fan of cross training, that you don't expose the body to those repeated movement patterns for an entire 12-month season, right? The body,
I like that you said that.
Yeah, exactly. The body likes pattern disruption. The body does not like monotony, right? So it's like, you get away from it for a little bit and you cross train. And first month after the season, do some swimming and do some hiking and do some things that your body's not used to. It's good psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, and physically, for sure, from a tissue standpoint. But to your point, without a doubt, there will be some type of either recommendation, advice, counsel from the people that know that player's body, the bulk of which is probably the team personnel. Yep. Again, physical therapist, strength coach, maybe player development coach, and some type of mapped out schedule, proactive schedule in advance. Like, here's where, within reason, here's where we all think we should start 5-on-5, and you don't want to hop right in on day one and play 2 hours worth of 5-on-5. Let's just dose it in responsibly. Like, play a couple games the first week, right? And, play 3 days that first week. And then that might be July or so, right around summer league time. A lot of guys do kick in their 5-on-5 around that time. And you start running full court, maybe late July, maybe all throughout August, and then September in the NBA, everybody starts coming back to the facilities and rejoining the team environment right around Labor Day, at which point, again, reintroduction of full court movement patterns and getting guys prepped and ready for training camp.
Are there stories?
So it would vary. I'm sorry. It would vary in terms of volume and everything, but there would definitely be proactive recommendations and discussion about when to dose it in and how often and how much and volume and intensity and everything. And, the players don't want to run themselves into the ground in the off season.
No, I'm sure they're exhausted.
They just want to know they're prepared, right? And they want to make sure that their game is sharp for, obviously when they return to the team environment. So it's a partnership for sure. Again, the teams stay very involved with the players.
I was going to ask, how much contact do you have with the players in the off season?
Yeah, tons. I mean, there are teams now, again, like the staffs have gotten so large where, between the athletic training staff, the strength and conditioning staff, sports scientists, physical therapists, probably each of those staff have certain player responsibilities to maintain regular contact with them, weekly, keep up to speed. Again, if they go home to their city for a couple months, the team may send people out to visit them and spend some time with them wherever they're training and connect with their remote personal trainers and coaches, and just, you never want surprises when players come back in
No, and
September.
that's a heck of an investment each team
Yeah,
is
yeah.
making
You
in
don't,
players, so that
you
makes
don't want a guy
100% for
showing
'em.
up with an injury he didn't know about, or
Yeah,
10 pounds of, mass, or, not good weight that they,
I remember
or the other way,
pictures.
lost too much weight without
Yeah,
knowing about it, or deconditioned without knowing about it. So it's, again, it's all relationships. It's all, um, again, I think the best word is a partnership, to make sure that, everyone is in touch with what that player needs to improve heading into a new season.
I imagine those teams do the best too, where that communication is always open, and that relationship and that level of trust is there, where
Yeah.
everybody knows, all right, we're all working for the same goal together.
Yep.
And that makes things easier.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the pickup 5-on-5 runs,
Yeah.
I assume those are like invite only, but I can't imagine showing up to a court to play and then you're watching NBA players, and at that point in time you just take your shoes off and sit on the bench
Yeah.
and enjoy the show. But are there stories and things like that you hear where they're really out in public, or are these usually?
Yeah, occasionally, I think those would be very few and far between now at this point. They wouldn't probably do that outdoor on a playground or anything. I mean, again, you hear some stories of guys going up to play at Rucker, or, like those cool guys, guys
Yeah,
just showed up at a playground in some of those summer leagues. But for the most part, the 5-on-5 will be in one of the destination cities, usually LA or Miami or Chicago or New York. And there are well-known enough indoor gyms where a lot of pros train, and guys know that they can go there, and, around noon or 1 every day, they'll probably start running, and, guys can get in, and you definitely do have to prove your worth. And, randoms just can't show up and get in on those games. You would have to be a pro caliber player, either a known, accomplished Division I player that is sort of entering the league environment. Any guys that play overseas, certainly welcome. Right, those are pro players. Maybe they're not NBA pro caliber players, but they're certainly pros. Veteran guys, and all that
yeah.
stuff, and then current NBA guys. All those would probably be well accepted into those games.
I do remember hearing a story with Garnett talking about getting a call to head down when Jordan and Pippen and all those guys were playing, and they called him down to play, and he's
Yep.
covering Pippen as a high school kid, and
Uh-huh.
it just sounded like a cool experience. But you're right, you need the invite to get to
Yeah,
play.
well, I'm here in Philadelphia, and you hear those same types of stories about a young high school age Kobe Bryant,
Yeah,
who grew up 5 minutes from where the Sixers practice facility was at that point in time in the 90s. And he would just show up, and again, as a 14, 15, 16-year-old, feel as at home on the court playing against guys that are 10 years older than him in an NBA environment. He
that's
was that
great.
talented at that age. Yeah.
His talk about work ethic, his work ethic, and I mean, I have no personal experience, but what you hear and the stories you hear, it was dialed in, and it was pretty legendary. I remember him saying something where I think he decided, or according to him, he decided at age 13 he wanted to be the best. And he said, anything else in my life that didn't get me there, I had no time for. He's like
Yeah.
that. And I guess to get to that level, that has to be your focus. You have to sacrifice other aspects of your life if that's, but it's like any job. You see people putting in, like Elon Musk, when he was building Tesla, was sleeping at the facility and putting in 20-hour days, and sometimes I'm sure 48 straight hours, and whatever you had to do to get it done. But that's what hard work and dedication really lead to in the end is, I mean, if you want to get to that level, that's what you got to do.
Absolutely. Those are differentiators for sure, and work ethic is a big one. Yeah.
In terms of, you mentioned nutrition and having a team dietitian on staff, did you notice players who were really dialed into their nutrition and their recovery? Is there a huge difference between, I hear about soft tissue injuries related to a lack of preparation or nutrition. I'm sure that's not always the case, but is there any correlation between really focusing on eating clean and in a healthy diet and getting, like you said, the supplements in when you need to in good recovery and avoiding injuries? I mean, you can't avoid all injuries. They're definitely.
Yeah, no, and that's that we're always very careful with our language around that, and I learned that very early as a strength coach. There's not a practitioner, a responsible practitioner in the world that will use the word eliminate injury.
Yeah, you can't. You
It's
can't.
just not going to happen, right? What we do is
Minimize.
we manage risk.
Yeah.
We manage risk, right? And good programs will reduce the risk of an injury occurring, but you'll never fully eliminate them. And that's one of the things when I talk with parents and everything is if you do have someone that's looking you in the eye and say your kid won't get injured if you train with me, that's one to run fast from,
Yes.
because he's
Yeah.
just not telling the truth. All of that being said, I do believe there is a correlation to that, but I don't think it's a direct correlation to just, to use your words, eating clean and, a commitment to recovery or anything. I think those two things, when it's dialed in, is a reflection of the bigger picture commitment to just doing all of the things.
I got you.
Nutrition and recovery being one of them. Guys that are normally really tight with that and regimented and take pride in eating healthy and, lean proteins and colorful vegetables on the plate and choosing the right starches and everything. And for the most part, do that with most meals. And then again, have figured out the recovery strategies that help them best. And, not necessarily talking, cold water immersion and massage, but sleep, right? And they set up their schedules to make sure that they have dialed in their sleep opportunity and take care of that and everything. When those two things are on point, I think it's just a reflection of the professionalism of that athlete. And then that same athlete is probably not missing many workouts, probably very committed to their on-court loading, probably very committed to all of the other things that go into making themselves what we would term a true pro. So I think it's just a reflection of really good habits overall, because those two things are easy to sacrifice, right? To not have a consistent approach to your diet and your supplementation, and let it fall off and make poor choices. And again, there's plenty of opportunities to stay out late and take advantage of nightlife when you're of that caliber and you have that those means and all that stuff. But the guys that take it seriously, they don't let those things happen. That they take care of, and they tick all of the boxes that they know they need to tick to keep their health and wellness in check. So yeah, I would say there is a correlation, but not necessarily direct, just an indication that they're doing all.
If you're willing to dial in one or two aspects, you pretty much are going to dial in all aspects.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I understand you wrote a best-selling, award-winning book. Any chance you can tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I did, and it relates to the conversation for sure. It was it's funny because for many years when I was working in the NBA, this was born out of a presentation I would give where I would talk a lot to young coaches who would either reach out to me or you end up speaking to people at conferences and. How did you get to the NBA? I would love to get there someday, right? Advice, counsel type conversations. And, you would talk some technical stuff and everything. Inevitably, I would always talk about the interpersonal skill side of being a practitioner or a coach. Yeah. Connections, communication, work ethic and professionalism and self-awareness, all these things, working in that high pressure NBA or pick a league environment. They're not things that any degree ever teaches you how to do, and a lot of people make mistakes, and some people navigate it successfully and some don't, and you end up seeing that it's a really important skill set that often gets overlooked. So I would have those conversations. I built a presentation around it back in like sort of the mid 2010s, and some people had said, "Hey, this would make a great book," and it's like, "Yeah, okay, cool." Yeah. There's always a reason not to write a book though, right? Which is like life and work and all that. So, and then I got fired from my job during COVID, and I literally that night I'm like, oh, man, no reason to not start the book. I'm not doing anything anymore. So, so I literally like put pen to paper that night and started storyboarding the story that where I wanted to teach the importance of growing an interpersonal skill set, particularly angled at like the 23-year-old version of me and you. Right. Just out of undergrad, wide-eyed, can't wait to start training athletes or working at a gym, personal training, or, pick a role, physical therapist, dietitian, whatever you want, right? You're so anxious and excited to work as a technician. You don't even think that you need to grow your ability to communicate. You don't even think about leadership skills. You don't even think about self-aware cultural awareness or versatility or adaptability. It's not even on your radar. You want to learn how to improve linear speed or improve a vertical jump or something. So I wanted to get that message out, how important it is to consider that skill set as well. So that's sort of what the book is about.
What's the title of the book?
Yeah, it's called The Intent is to Grow. You can find it on Amazon, and my website, balancethebar.com, has a link to the site. And it's a business parable. So it's a fictional story about a young strength and conditioning coach, 23 years old, that gets his first graduate assistant opportunity. And he lands at a fictional Division I university that values interpersonal skills and has built an entire week-long orientation program around teaching those to all of their medical and performance practitioners. So he spends his first week meeting with 6 different mentors or guides, I call them in the book.
Oh, I like that.
And they teach him a different interpersonal skill set, right? So you have this young coach that's like, again, about to start training Division I athletes, and he's sent to to audit a class from a communications expert at the university, and they start talking about a multiplanar communication model that I built to communicate to people that work in high performance sport environments, that communication in all directions, managing up, leading down, I call it frontal plane communication. How do you deal with your colleagues and your teammates, and then all these surrounding people in the transverse plane? The importance of including everyone in your communication, the importance of delivering your message impactfully, and making sure it's received well each time. That's just one example. Again, there's other interpersonal skills that are taught throughout the book. But it was a fun project. Again, it was literally me sitting in this basement at 5 a.m. every morning and chipping away, trying to get 1,500 words a day done. And it took me 10 months to write. It's all self-published and self-marketed, and radically different from anything I did for 20 years in the team setting. But it was a fun challenge. That
seems like a clever approach to teach it, by having it like almost told from someone's point of view, going through and meeting these guides. When you first mentioned it, I was thinking like, all right, it's going to be chapter 1. This is how you talk to people this way. Chapter 2, but that seems like a much more engaging way to go about it, where, it's a story, but you can also pull all those lessons out of it. So
yeah, we all do our thinking and our creative thinking and our idea generating at different times. And I don't know if this was in a shower or on a walk or a run or anything, but to your point, like my original concept was going to be that type of nonfiction, in-text citations, something you'd read from an Adam Grant or a Brene Brown or somebody like that. And then it just dawned on me, I was reading another business parable at the time, and I thought, God, it'd be really cool to communicate it that way. Like, instead of going over the literature behind emotional intelligence, why not create an emotionally intelligent character and let people see how that person operates in an athletic department, right? And the one I built happened to be, she was the associate AD for academic support, right?
Oh,
and,
right.
And she, you see interactions that she has with athletes, and just how caring and how warm she is as this motherly academic support leader, right? And give a whole bunch of examples of emotional intelligence and compassion and all of that stuff. So. Yeah,
it's much easier to access to fiction than nonfiction, generally speaking, and it's far more engaging. So that's a cool way to go about it.
Yep.
So everything that you've learned through training everybody else in setting up the programs that you've done, how have you incorporated that in your life, in your career? And I imagine if that's what you're doing to help everybody else, you can't just kind of turn that off when you think about your own life.
No, not at all. And I would say probably if I'm talking about my health and fitness world right now, I think some of the best stuff that's prepared me is joint mobility, and not knowing that it doesn't always have to be hard all of the time. And the 25-year-old version of me was all about pushing and pulling heavy weight and getting as big and as strong as I could be. Right, just clawing and scratching to try to get to 170 pounds. Right? And eating 9 times a day and shakes and all that stuff. And Now I just want to be healthy enough that I can throw batting practice to my son without without my
Exactly.
shoulder or my elbow hurting the next day. So I think the first thing is just recognizing that your goals and objectives in your fitness and your health and your wellness are something you should continually audit, that they're very different. They change over time. What is the rationale and the why behind why you train? And some of it is just, again, it's emotional and the psychological benefits that you get from that, from feeling better and entering your days better and executing and productivity and all that stuff. Or some of us still might have some aesthetic goals, right? And we want to maintain the look that we want to look and fit into the clothing that we want to fit into and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then some of them, maybe we are still competing at this point. You have someone that still loves playing pickup basketball and just wants to be healthy enough to be able to do that, or compete in an ultra marathon or something, right? All of those goals are real and possible and appropriate depending on what it is you're trying to get after, but that we should re-audit those regularly and then adjust our training and our approach to nutrition, health, recovery, sleep, and everything accordingly. And I think that is the way, in addition to finding things that you enjoy doing, because consistency is the key to any of this, that is the way to continue to have lifelong success in health and fitness. And again, I've seen that, and I've learned that over time in delivering that message to athletes with changing goals all of the time. Sometimes it's weight gain, sometimes it's weight loss. Yeah. Sometimes you are really, addressing a lot of hot spot injury, previously injured joints or muscles or anything like that. It's a constantly evolving, ever-changing world. And then you carry that into when a player all of a sudden retires and he's no longer competitive and he moves into a former athlete setting. Now, What does he do with his workouts? That you don't just turn your back on training at that point, at least you hope not.
No.
You no longer have to train your body to play 35 minutes a night of NBA basketball. So now you've moved into a new goal, right? And a new objective in terms of your training. So I think that's really important to recognize that that's okay, that you actually do need to make regular periodic audits and adjustments to your training to make sure you can still stay on track with keeping consistent with whatever version of your training is. And to coach that for many years in others and to now apply that to my own, training, I think has been super helpful for me.
I like how you said audit frequently. So, as we get older, and I'm sure it's with the players too, training somebody when they're 22, 23, as opposed to a veteran in his mid 30s who wants to continue to play, obviously I would assume, maybe not obviously it's the right word, but I assume the train changes as they get older. And I know for myself, my son for the first time just beat me one-on-one in pickup basketball, which,
very humbling.
It is humbling.
Very humbling, isn't it?
I couldn't have been prouder that it finally happened, and I didn't let him. We played 2 games of one-on-one, and then he's like, let's do one more. I'm like, all right. And it was close, but he put the shot in at the end to beat me, and it was like, all right, good. Like it happened. Happy for him. Like, this is awesome, but I want to be able to keep playing for as long as I can. So in one of the pickup leagues I play in, the age ranges from 22 to 78 years old. And the 78-year-old,
that's amazing,
still gets up and down the court really well.
Yep.
Obviously, he's not as fast as the 22-year-old, but the guy can put the ball in the basket if you don't cover it. That's the goal. I mean, I think I've been playing in that league 25 years now. So he was older than I am now when I first met him.
Wow.
And it's like,
that's incredible. I absolutely love hearing stories about those types of guys and everything. The love of the game and the desire and the drive to keep their body in shape to be able to continue to do it. I can picture his game in my mind right now. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And he's probably just running like corner to corner. He gets the odd outside shot now and again. He's probably not. Yeah.
He takes it inside too. He throws elbows like it's nobody's business.
All right, there you go.
But he's it's impressive. He's an orthopedic surgeon or was in kind of transition, but definitely has a medical background, so understands longevity. But it's I don't know, it's pretty inspirational to see him out there. In terms, you mentioned you worked with some performance technology as well. I know I met you through Craig Guile from Myth,
Yeah.
which he was kind enough to send out a prototype to test out, which
Oh yeah.
I was shocked with how well it actually worked.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't think it would, but just to go through a baseline test and then do it with the glove or the mitt, it was pretty crazy. So are there a lot of different technologies out there that you guys work with or try out or get shown?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, the world of sport technology now is almost endless. It started, it started coming hot and heavy towards my last few years in the NBA, where you're just being peppered with, emails, and then you go to trade shows a couple times a year, and it's just tricked out with buzzing and blinking lights, and it's just, again, like there's
How do you through it all?
so many ways to measure what athletes do objectively these days, and a lot of them are, right on our wrist, right? And,
Yeah.
wearable and commercially available to, you know, pick up basketball level athletes and all that stuff. And then a lot of them are really high tech and, expensive and, scientifically validated and research and all that stuff too, that, might be reserved for team setting and all that stuff. Um, that again, part of one of my verticals for my consultancy, I have a lot of conversations about sport technologies. Coolmit is the one that I'm most directly involved in as sort of an official consultant with them. And I totally agree, pardon the pun, it is such a cool item because of the physiology and the science behind it. Like people just aren't aware of the impact that heat has on creating a fatigue state,
Yeah.
right? As heat accumulates in your body, either locally in your musculature when you're doing a set of pull-ups or dips or push-ups or max burpees, or I don't know, pick an exercise. But one of the reasons you fatigue and you can't go any longer is because heat accumulates either
Yeah.
locally or systemically. And the simple act of mitigating that accumulation of heat through these specialized blood vessels in your palm has a huge impact on delaying fatigue in so many different settings. And, you learn that in your undergraduate physiology classes when you take those,
Yeah.
but it was easy to forget over the years, right? And, just again, you look at all these, the different energy pathways, and you get into some of the energy production physiology and everything, and you lose sight of that. But then I, just being involved in the project, dug back into all of those physiology textbooks and was reminded about how big of an impact and how big of a factor heat is in causing fatigue. And this is a pretty simple and easy and
Simple is the right word.
innovative device to be able to address that, to delay fatigue and have people work out a lot longer. Yeah.
The fact that you just slide your hand in for 30 seconds and that's it. Like
Yeah.
it could not be easier. So it was
Yeah.
it was a good experience for me, and I imagine you guys get to see it.
Yeah. There were two big
Firsthand.
boxes that got me really intrigued and excited to do that. And number one, first and foremost, the science behind it is really strong.
Yeah.
The founding scientists are some of the foremost authorities in thermoregulation in the world. I don't say that lightly at all. There is a lot of firepower behind the innovation in the product and the IP, and then the practicality of use. Again, my world for my last 5 years in the NBA was introducing all of the various technologies that the team purchased and investigated to help the team be better. And I was one of a few people that would introduce these to the players, right? Hey,
Yeah.
we think this can be helpful. Do you want to try this? And if there's any level of difficulty or inefficiency or pain in the buttness that
Yeah.
gets in the way of my routine, like generally isn't very well accepted. This thing blows that out of the water. To your point, you literally just like, hey, just come on over and slide your hand in, and just one hand
Yeah.
in between your sets in the weight room today, or in between our 15 bike sprint sets that we're going to do today for your anaerobic conditioning, just so you can do whatever you were going to do. Just slide your hand into this mitt,
Yeah.
and it'll be a much more productive and effective workout, as a result of mitigating the accumulation of heat. So those were two big boxes, and two of the big reasons I even got involved with them.
Well, that's awesome. So yeah, it was a great conversation with Craig and to see that in action. I I appreciate you coming on. I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. Is there anything else that we didn't hit on that you were hoping we would? Oh, I did. Sorry, I did think of one thing I wanted to
Yeah,
ask.
of course.
In terms of younger athletes,
Uh-huh.
they're the high school age or even middle school, looking to kind of progress as much as they can with the opportunities that they have. Would you have any recommendations or suggestions for people that age in terms of training or at least just how to get the most out of whatever opportunities they have in
Yeah,
general?
I am. There's a lot of them, particularly at that younger age. Let's talk, middle school age kids. That to me is still an age where there has to be an element of fun. If it gets too structured and too disciplined, and I know, believe me, I'm very well aware of that landscape out there, and there's plenty of um, too much structure is how I'll say it nicely.
Yeah, I I
with
know what
you,
you're referring to.
yeah,
Yeah,
with year round sort of demands. I can use that word.
yeah,
I'm very aware of it now that I am a parent of a teen, and the sort of the pressure to play one sport year round and do everything that a club director and sort of demands that a kid does as part of it and all that stuff. I get it and everything, but if that ever sort of begins to create a world where a kid at that age, and even as it creeps into 15, 16, where they actually lose the enjoyment of it, I think that's a big red flag, and we're missing the whole point of why kids should play sports first and foremost in the first. It should be fun, it should be enjoyable, it should
yeah,
be a vehicle to improve character and life experience and a teaching tool for what we know are going to be big challenges coming later in life and everything. It's the beauty of what sports does for kids. So if the structure and the monotony and the demands of adults get in the way of that, I think we're just, I think it's a really, really huge oversight and a miss on our parts as adults. The second thing I said, sort of related, is play as many sports as you can, as long as you can. Early specialization. This is a whole separate podcast for me, and I'm.
yeah,
If we had more conversations, you would know I'm very there's not many topics I'm dogmatic on. I think a lot of what we do is gray, and generally most things work if you do them responsibly and everything. But early sports specialization is just, I think it's everything that's wrong with how youth sports is these days, with um, parents believing their kids need to play a sport year round or 10 months of the year, that is the pathway to being better when they get older, and missing out on other sports opportunities and the organic athleticism and motor skill development that comes from playing other sports and leaving one sport, moving on to other adults to coach them, moving on to other movement patterns, moving on to other experiences, and all of that amazingness that comes from playing multiple sports as kids. If we yank that away from them at 8 years old, thinking that my kid will get a scholarship if I have him play more baseball at 8 through 18, and that it's just, again, it's just such a huge misinformation, and I get where it comes from. I never really understood it before being the parent of a teen. But
yeah.
it's just wrong. It really is. And if your audience can hear one thing, the parents of younger athletes and everything, it's like that would be the thing. Try to avoid specialization as much as you possibly can. Now, if your kid enjoys playing that year round, then those are different conversations to have. But to pull a kid out of another sport because you believe playing one sport is the way to really get him better, it's just it's wrong for so many reasons.
Well, I think it also,
Yeah.
like you had mentioned in the off season, for professional athletes to do something different so their
Yeah.
body gets used to it and
Yeah.
everything. Like, there's so much growth in learning as the kids are growing up that
Yeah.
you don't want one set of movements to train a kid in, because then when the time comes where they're put in a different position, then their body doesn't know how to react to that.
Yeah.
And like you said, the fun and enjoyment is the biggest part. It was, I don't know if these numbers are still accurate, but at one point it was, I think 7% of all high school athletes will play college sports on some level.
Yeah.
And then I think it's 1 to 2% play at D1.
Yeah.
So the likelihood of going that route it's not very high. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but if you're banking everything on you need this, then there's that emotional aspect too, for the likelihood that you're not a professional athlete and your parents have spent, I don't know how many thousands of dollars to try and give you the best training. And then, what if you don't like it? Like you said, at 13 or 14, then you feel that obligation, and I don't know.
And it's a big miss in three primary areas that I think, again, people don't necessarily recognize. That exposure to the repetitive movement patterns of one sport in a developing body, call it 11 to 15 or so, 10 to 15. That's a much higher injury risk, whether you're talking about a kid that pitches way too much or you're talking about a kid that plays way too much structured basketball, coached basketball, right? Not necessarily playground basketball. That's a little bit different because it's self-guided and all that stuff. Of course, you and I played a ton of playground basketball in the summer. That's different than having to go to practice 10 months a year. That's
Very
different.
different.
So that's a more injured joint. That's a more injured young kid, which horrible for sure. It is not the pathway to develop overall athleticism. You lose the opportunity that what other sports and other coaches can develop in terms of all around ability and athleticism. And then, the risk of burnout, right? It just runs kids into the ground where, at the least of which they might start to hate the sport and they might want to quit sports altogether. And, 0 for 3 in my opinion there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you think of some of the greatest athletes of all time. You got Jordan playing baseball and basketball, and Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson, and those guys were multi-sport athletes for, into the pro level.
Right.
Didn't work as well for Jordan, but the fact that he was playing at that level.
Derek, I can't tell you how many guys that, again, NBA players that I know and trained, that many of them said basketball wasn't even my best sport.
Yeah, exactly.
So, seriously, like many of them. I could easily be playing Major League Baseball right now. I could easily be playing in the NFL right now. Yeah.
Which is great. And I remember stories of Jason Williams, basketball player, growing up with Randy Moss, and they're on the same team together. And, Moss goes and plays football, but apparently he just walked onto the track team to win the state in the 100 too, because he just, he was an athlete. So I agree 100% with you there. I see it in teaching at the level I do, even with the younger kids, where the parent involvement is no longer a benefit to the kid, where it becomes a detriment, and it's not an enjoyable experience for anybody. The coaches, refs, players, other fans, it gets bad. So I think, leaving with that, the purpose of all this is happiness and enjoyment, and it's something you can do well past your athletic years, so to speak. When you get older and you're still 78 years old running up and down the basketball court, that's a shout out to you, Tommy. Good job, buddy.
There you go.
But thank you. I couldn't tell you how excited I was, or express how excited I was to have you on this with us today. A lot of good information. I think it's a conversation, especially all the way up to the end, that I think is important for people to hear. So
equally excited and happy to join you on the podcast. I appreciate the opportunity, Derek. Yeah, this was fun.
If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way? I know you said balancethebar.com.
The website for the interpersonal skill development, balancethebar.com. I do have a free coaching app that you can download. The link to download it from the Apple Store is on that site. Admin@balancethebar.com is the email. It's on that site. That comes to me directly. The social media I'm most active on is Instagram, at Jesse K Wright, JesseKWright. I'm on LinkedIn as well, but I don't have as big of a presence there. Instagram's the one I'm mostly on. So I really do enjoy and welcome people to reach out. If any of your listeners have any questions and want to direct message me on any one of those platforms or anything like that, I really do enjoy that back and forth and connecting with people whenever I do these podcasts and everything. So please feel free to reach out if I can help in any way.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes for people, as well as a link to the book.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be great.
There. And we've got a newsletter too, so I'll put that information in there.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, the podcast is slowly growing. We're not at the point where we want to be yet, but you got to start somewhere or
That's the
keep
only
going
way
up.
it happens. Yeah.
Oh, and on that note, you can, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, we are on YouTube at the Health Movement Podcast. Also, you can go to healthmovement.us, which is the website, and sign up for our newsletter there as well. Do the whole like, subscribe, follow thing. And if the more comments you leave, we can go back and forth and kind of give you some feedback there as well. So thank you all for listening. We know time is the most important thing, most valuable thing that you have. So we appreciate you taking the time with us. Oh, good night, everybody.